Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to this month's ID update. Hello, it's me, Tom, and look, it's Heidi. No, other side, it's Heidi.
Hi, it's me.
We hope you've had a really great month. We've got, I think, maybe one kind of outlook conversation and one quite interesting conversation today. We'll be discussing more consolidation in the EdTech space, everyone's favorite topic, I know, but it's important, especially if you're one of the people whose provider is about to change. And we'll be taking a look at the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines new draft release for version 3, which sees some really quite big changes to what online accessibility might look like in the future. Before we get into any of that, though, let's, of course, roll the shiny intro for the second time. Still like that music. That's good music.
I know, it's great. I like that intro.
So,
if I do say
Heidi.
so myself.
It's just, yeah, well done. Excellent work.
Cracking ourselves up over here, you know.
How's your month been anyway?
It's been good. It's been pretty busy. We're in full swing in school. I was sick for like 3 weeks out of the month, but other than that, it's been, it's like that. Your kid goes back to school and then brings you just germs after germs after germs. But my son turned 9 and had a really fun birthday party, and I made a Death Star piñata, and that was kind of the highlight of my month.
That's a good highlight. I like that.
What about you?
Well, I have not had a Death Star piñata this month. Very sad. It's kind of all hands to events. It's that time of year again, right? We're in the countdown to a lot of the big conferences, the Learning Network. We're getting ready for Connect. We've got the talent gathering in Edinburgh, like next week. We've got World of Learning coming up. It's kind of all go. So yeah, very exciting. We're also getting very close to the launch of Tandemo at Evolve, which is very exciting and mildly terrifying. But hey, that's what you do.
Of course.
Everyone who's joining us live as well, first of all, hello, thank you for joining us. Let us know in the comments what you've been up to this month, professionally or otherwise. We'd always like to know where people are at, what they're up to. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into consolidation in the EdTech space. So the big story in this month is going to be Sana selling to Workday. I guess there's two sides to this. I guess I think Laurie Niles Hoffman probably put it best that if you're a Workday Learning customer, you just won the freaking lottery. In that, good news, you won't be a Workday Learning customer for much longer. You will soon escape that hell. But my kind of feeling is that if you're a Sana customer, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Right.
And I think this is the kind of flip side to all this. That you go, oh great, this company's buying in this incredibly interestingly innovative platform of new ideas and different ways of working. It's like, yeah, but big companies don't operate like that. They buy up these small, innovative, nimble companies and then say, and now you play by our rules, which basically means everything gets to be crap now. That's just my take. Heidi, your thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people that have shared kind of Laurie's sentiment and looked on, the first half of her sentiment and looked on like the bright side, right? Like this, Workday is so lucky to have this team. And like the general consensus seems to be that Sana is really great and wonderful and well-respected and innovative. But my concern is I've been through 2 Workday implementations, and when you're a client of Workday, you learn a little bit about the culture, right? Of somebody that you collaborate with that closely. And just from that one interaction, I don't think Sana's going to be the same, right? Like I would love for them to be the scrappy people that come in and influence and make Workday Learning one of like the best options out there. But Workday Learning is the worst LMS I've ever used, and I've used dozens. And now, granted, I haven't used it in several years. But when it was new, it was the worst. Like, it wasn't even a contest. Like, you know how people feel about having to create an account whenever they have to apply to a Workday related job? Like, that's also how it feels using Workday Learning. So, I would love to think that it's going to be like innovative and great. And I think, honestly, at the beginning, it'll seem that way, right? There will be some roadmap things that happen, some culture things that happen, some really promising things, some people hired or people promoted or moved around organizationally that seem really, really promising. And like, wow, they're really going to go in the right direction. But I think over time, you're just going to see that like slowly chipped away, like big wheel corporate culture kind of come back in focus.
Yeah, and I think this thing, like I'm on record, I am no great fan of tech consolidation at all. It's financially necessary. I get that, because a lot of people start businesses with the sole goal of being acquired by a larger organization.
Sure.
That's the business objective. But I do think it's a great shame, and is one of the reasons that the EdTech space is ultimately so stagnant over the long term, that whenever anything new and innovative and creative comes along, a big player buys it and inch by inch kills it. Look at all the things that have been bought by SAP or Cornerstone over the years. None of them have survived in any meaningful way. And those platforms are still awful to use and to administer. I still remember when, who was it Cornerstone that bought Saba? I think it was, wasn't it?
I think so.
I think it was. And it must have been like we were halfway through sort of onboarding with Saba. And so luckily when it's we're going to terminate this contract now. But why? Because we were leaving Cornerstone to come to Saba. And we know what they're about to do to this platform. Same as, when Adobe tried to buy Figma, thank goodness that was stopped, because I think it would have utterly destroyed Figma.
Sure.
Because why would Adobe want, it's the least Adobe product I think I've ever come across.
Sure. Yeah.
It's nimble, it's highly creative, it's very responsive to its users. It doesn't just ignore them and bill them through the nose. So yeah, it's necessary, but I think it is a shame. And this isn't like a one-off case. I mean, also in the last couple of months, we've had Thrive has bought Guida and Hula, however you pronounce their name, like a mentoring platform and an intranet platform, which is, an interesting set of things to buy in when you're ultimately like an LXP and comms platform. But interesting stuff. There seems to be just consolidation galore, which does leave me a little bit worried as to so who's going to be innovating? Because it's not
right.
If you're, in the background, I've always got to think of if your company is gobbling up other companies, you are choosing to invest money in eating other people's ideas rather than generating truly new ideas.
Right.
So who's coming up with the next big thing? Because it sure as heck isn't any of these existing EdTech companies, quite clearly.
No.
And if the sole goal, seemingly, of all new EdTech companies is to get to a certain level of annual recurring revenue so someone buys you, does that not just ensure that we never really meaningfully move forwards? Is this why the same 5 or 6 platforms and 2 or 3 authoring tools have dominated the industry pretty much forever? That doesn't sound like a healthy, thriving ecosystem in which to work, does it?
No, and I think there's also I've noticed a pattern where there's almost like an avoidance of competition, right? And there's I don't know if it was like this for you growing up, but I'm pretty sure this was like a global thing though, like the Pepsi versus Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And there was tons of other brands like McDonald's and Burger King would do digs at each other. Like, and you still see that sometimes, but it goes like really, really viral if it happens. But it seemed like it was so much more common. And now you get, well, you know, even me as like a consultant and an advisor, I sometimes hear from people, oh, well, I see that you support this person, or I see that you've supported, you know, that you're collaborating with this person. And, you know, is there enough room for all of these authoring tools or LMSs? And my answer is always the same. It's always just, absolutely there is. There's plenty of room. And like, we could use the competition. And if you're afraid of someone else's authoring tool being better than yours, then get better, right? Don't say, oh, well, hopefully we can just, you know, get acquired by somebody and somebody will feel bad for us. Like, get better, be greater, right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's the more we the thing that was that is promising, I think, is that we have these things like Lovable and ways to start the process ourselves now. We may not be able to, you know, get it all perfect, but so many more people can start a product or launch an idea or carry something forward than they used to be able to. And I think that that's really, really important for the innovation. And I, you know, some of my favorite LMSs have like been like, have gone off the radar because they got acquired, right? And then you don't hear anything from the company that acquires them about how they're using them, how you can still interact with them. And, you know, it's a real shame.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't see it stopping because, of course, we've seen it in big tech as well this last couple of weeks, obviously, with the US government buying a chunk of Intel and then NVIDIA buying a big chunk of Intel. Like how that's vaguely approaching legal, I don't know. But we could start buying components of our competitors. That sounds like a sensible idea for promoting competition in the market. But hey, yeah. So I appreciate that, like, you may be sat there thinking, why does this matter to me? I'm an instructional designer, I'm an L&D manager, all these sort of things. But ultimately, and that's why I don't want to spend like too long on this topic, but it is important that we understand the industry that we work in. And it's important that we understand that when we say, you know, why are these tools not moving forwards? Why are we, you know, why do we always joke about how far behind we are technologically than other industries, when in theory, we are a tech savvy audience. We should be able to utilize exciting new technology. A lot of the things that hold us back are these business world things. It's the fact that whenever any company is innovative and exciting, it gets gobbled up by a company that decidedly is not. Yeah. Not because often, and this is, I'm going to say often, because occasionally you get a breakout one where they do, you know, really run with what they bought, but usually they buy it and they kill it because they're afraid of competition. That's the reality.
Yeah.
And if you study business, that's 100% part of the playbook.
Yep.
When you look at what these big consulting agencies will advise big businesses to do, it is bury your competition in cash or in lawsuits. Those are your choices. Notably, they never say, what if you made a better product than the competitor?
Right. Bury them with greatness.
Wouldn't that be nice? But hey, that's a nice doom and gloom thing to get us started. But hopefully it's not doom and gloom. It's more just a, hey, this is happening, and you know, we should all be aware of this and be thinking about what it means for us. Congratulations to Workday users. Maybe life will get a little bit better for you. Lord knows you deserve it if you've been using Workday for any length of time. And to those who have recently signed with Sana, I'm so sorry. Hopefully it goes really well. But if not, good news, there are competitors out there. And you can leverage that when you're asking them why your platform now sucks in like 2 years' time. So moving on from that, let's talk about accessibility.
Ooh.
Which I think is the more exciting of the two topics. More exciting, we've got a new draft. The WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, produced by W3C, have shared an updated draft for version 3. Notably, it's a draft. Nobody panic. We don't have to make any changes today. But it's really different. Heidi, have you had much chance to look at this yet?
Yeah, so the first thing I did before I looked at it was I, of course, asked AI to summarize the differences for me, as one does.
Of course.
And then I was like, surely it can't be this different. And so then I opened it myself and I was like, oh, it's entirely different. Even down to like, you know, taking away, like changing POUR, the acronym that everybody associates with accessibility. You know, but I really do. I like the broad focus. I think it's obviously a lot more inclusive, right?
This is it. And actually, like the getting rid of like POUR has always irritated me. Like it's kind of become acceptable, but it makes no goddamn sense. Like perceivable, operable, understandable. I can sort of get behind. It seems to me that's unnecessarily complex language, which is a requirement of the. But that's not there. But then, out of nowhere, robust. Like in so many workshops, I've had to stop and explain what they mean by robust.
Right.
Like, it makes no sense. Moving to what they're calling like explicit functional categories. I think. Just at headline level, I know what those words mean. But then we're talking vision, hearing, mobility, cognition. Like that, it's so much simpler, so much clearer. There are terms that, if you're talking about accessibility, exist elsewhere in the accessibility world. And I think even to a lay person, you're going to read that and go, oh, well, this relates to cognition. Oh, okay, thought, information, understanding. I'm with you. Like these are universal words rather than hyper-specific accessibility words. I think that alone is a huge change, but some of the others I think are great as well.
Yeah, it seems that perhaps the team who originally created the previous version had like, you know, a Q or an F letter word with the POU that they were trying to make work, and they like T or something, and they're like, we can't call it pout. What can we come up with? You know, I've been there, I've done that, right? Like they're like, we need a really cool acronym for this, and you spend a week trying to rack your brain. But I think the other thing too that I really appreciate and like about it, putting on my English professor hat, is the new stuff around language. There's a part, hold on, let me take a look over here. I have it open. The parts around clear language, no unnecessary words, no nested clauses, non-literal language. Like there's so many things that are covered. And you know, like right now, obviously, no unnecessary words. Like a lot of these are still in development, but it like right now it says sentences do not include unnecessary words or phrases. What a dream. Right? It's like if everyone followed these things, the internet wouldn't be such a dumpster fire, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and just to put it kind of into context, the new draft changes everything.
Everything.
Like from the guidelines, success criteria, not a thing anymore. We're moving to outcome-based guidelines. Outcomes. Descriptive outcomes. Specifically, 174 of them in this draft. Now, that will reduce. It always reduces from the draft to the final version, because as they always say, like, it's not a case of if they've made it to the draft, they consider them to be important. But some of them may prove to be impractical at scale.
Sure. Yeah.
So they always drop a few. However, the fact that there's such a big focus this time on those kind of cognitive or cognition-based guidelines being sort of massively padded out, I think is really, really positive. It is a huge increase on the old success criteria. But with the move to outcomes, we're also getting rid of the idea of passing and failing outcomes. And instead, there's a scoring mechanism. So you can score between 0 and 4 on an outcome. And so this is so, like, someone has clearly sat down and asked some really important questions about what you're trying to achieve with these guidelines. So you could, in theory, go, oh yeah, we've got alt text, yeah, but is it all of the images? And how good is your alt text? Because you might technically have it, but score a 1. Meaning, yes, you've done it, but there is room for significant improvement.
Sure.
And then to go with all of that, you've got these outcomes, you've got each outcome scored 0 to 4, and then they have completely gotten rid of the A, AA, and AAA stuff, which was always confusing because it was non-linear. Like AA was better than A, but some standards only had an A level, and AAA wasn't necessarily better than AA. It was additional extras, and it was messy as hell. New version, bronze, silver, gold.
Yeah.
That doesn't need explanation. We understand the bronze, silver, gold.
Yeah, it's global.
Right?
It's global.
And I also think what a genius psychological move to make vendors want to make their stuff very, very accessible. Because who now wants to go, oh, yes, we're bronze? No vendor is going to want to advertise that they are bronze level.
Bronze accessibility.
You know, everyone is going to want to claim that goal. Everyone, let's face it, there are going to be badges. Like within a week of this going live, real world, that some company will have set up an audit. There will be bronze, silver, and gold badges with scores depending on your 0 to 4 across different areas and all that sort of stuff. Every company is going to want to be able to put a little gold standard accessibility in their work. So actually, I think it is just a genius move in terms of not just creating great guidelines, but actually driving change. I think it's a bit of a masterclass for us as learning designers. Think, what do people actually give a shit about? And I think they know that most of what's going to drive this is going to be vendor level decisions.
Sure.
It's going to be what the authoring tools care about. It's going to be what the content libraries care about in our space. Broader, it's going to be what the web development platforms care about and what banks care about and all this sort of stuff. But in our world, it's going to be those. And I think they've clocked the fact that no one's going to want to be bronze. And bronze level roughly aligns to what AA is today. So actually, even delivering that means you're getting a solid, accessible experience. So if we do manage to get everyone to be silver and gold, 1, it'll be great marketing for them. And 2, the world will just be a more accessible place. So I've got to say, like, I'm sure there will be, as we all dive in deeper and look at specific outcomes, things that we go, oh, I would have tweaked this and I would have liked to have seen that change. But I think overall, masterclass in driving behavioral change in the commercial sector here from W3C.
Yeah, and I think the other thing by broadening it is at a time where, you know, we're seeing kind of this pendulum swing away from DEI and away from really important conversations. You know, there's kind of this silent, well, you're going to have to like pay your partner who you collaborate with to make sure that you're gold. More money now because they're looking at more facets, right? And so there's kind of like this nice little built-in, like, you know, the wonderful people that have spent so much time and effort working on accessibility now have, they have some homework because they're going to have to change their business model a little bit. But there's so many more things to look at, right? There's so much more opportunity there.
This is it. And I think that's when you read sort of their notes and I've posted a link, by the way, in all the chats to the draft guidelines. And the thing that really stands out to me, other than like the actual changes, the guidelines themselves, they've put a real focus on how broad these are in terms of what they apply to, like the scope that they apply to. So yes, web content, but they're also looking at documents, they're looking at authoring tools, they're looking at certain things of the use of AI and AI agents and how they work for us.
Yeah.
They've also restructured this in a way that should make revisions easier. So you may have noticed that version 2 has been around for quite a while. And in that time, we went from 2 to 2.1, quite recently, really, to 2.2. They're hoping that these changes make it a much more flexible framework that they can update, add addendums to, add additional outcomes to over time. So hopefully we'll get a little bit past 3.2. Because I think we realized very quickly that version 2 and 2.1, 2.2 after that is quite a rigid framework. It's very kind of this or that or this.
Yeah.
If pass, fail, it's very difficult to make any kind of changes to. The one thing I guess that does slightly concern me, and again, I have not gone through every element. I've had an initial pass through and a look at some of the bits that I know more about. But the thing that struck me is 174 outcomes is a lot. And it's probably incredibly valid that there are 174 outcomes. I worry about the practicality of sort of putting into action 174 outcomes. Specifically, when I think about the current push towards automated testing, with so many of them being like the cognition outcomes as well, I just don't see automated testing working.
Yeah.
But I thought what might be cool is if we have a look maybe at some of the guidelines and how the document has changed. So if we're going to attempt to share a screen, people. Let's see how this goes.
Whoa. Scary.
Let's share a screen. I understand. Share a tab. That one there. Share. Look at that. Right. So when we look at the guidelines, this is the draft, by the way. The draft has quite a lot of preamble at the start. You can see there's a whole thing about this is a draft. Please don't do this. This is early stage. All this sort of stuff. There's lots of stuff that we all recognize as W3C's way of approaching things. Then when we get down to the actual guidelines, much as before, we've got a lot of these sort of drop downs for helping us understand things. We've got the editor's note, which I would assume will be temporary. Then when we get down here, we've got these guidelines. So users have equivalent alternatives for images. So this is image alternatives, as we've always sort of known it to be, sits within image and media alternatives. So here then, we've got these ideas of foundational requirements, things that must be done. And here we've got a drop down explaining which foundational requirements apply. Would removing the image impact how people understand the page? No. Decorative image is programmatically hidden. Stop. Yes. Continue. This is kind of like a little flowchart.
Yeah.
This is quite a nice way of being able to apply this. Is the image presented in a way that is available to user agents and assistive technology? Yes. Image must meet blah, 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 blah. Stop. No. Continue. Is an equivalent text alternative available for the image? Yes. Blah, blah, blah. Stop. No. Fail. So I think this is potentially quite interesting. And this would be like on a per image basis.
Sure.
The idea being that I think to get like a 4 in this, you have to get like 95% of your images pass. So I think this is actually quite a nice way of laying these out with these foundational requirements. Next one along, equivalent text alternative. Text alternatives are available for images that convey content, and then images are programmatically determinable, i.e. you can see it's an image. None of this is new, but I think this layout makes a lot more sense than if we look at 2.2. Let me grab that. Guidelines. Got even just the start of 2.2 is horrifically long. So this is what we would currently see for a similar but not quite the same one. So if I go to there, has that changed over to 2.2?
Yes.
Lovely. So here we can see we got all of this for that. If we want help, we're going to need to navigate away from the page using these links. We've got really no explanation of how we go about testing this, no flow, no this is what passes and this is what fail is. I am of the opinion that the new one is significantly easier to understand, significantly easier to follow, and with the scoring mechanism, and they do need to share more specifically what the scoring framework will be, like what is consistently a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. But I think that, yeah, the current guideline is 95% adherence gets you a 4. So even then, even at top marks, as it were, you're seeing some variance and non-compliance, which I think is good. There has to be some, wiggle room for the real world, as it were.
Right. Right. Especially when you have so many parameters, right? Like this, what are they called? What's the word again that they use? 174 what?
Oh, outcomes, new word.
Outcomes. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, like especially when you have 174 outcomes, you have like, and if you look into some of them, you're like, oh, that would be hard to do for, you think of use cases where you're like, oh, it'd be really hard to do this for a branching scenario, for instance, right? Or, oh, this would be really hard to do at scale for like a ton of videos, or, like just little things like that where you're like, oh, I could see this being a challenge or something. And you can kind of like, get into the specific areas that best apply and kind of focus on those, which is nice.
No, absolutely. I think this overall, I got to say, I think this is such a positive step in terms of like as a user being able to come to this site and use it. Like 2.2 took me a long time, well, just 2.2, but version 2 in general, took me a long time of coming to this site, spending my time to figure it out, really trying to get to grips with it. And whenever now I've been looking more and more at this draft and looking at version 3, as someone just starting, this is so much easier to get to grips with.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think, so much of our behavior around whether or not we build accessibility in as standard or as an extra later on relates back to what we do early in our career. And this to me just strikes me as a huge opportunity to be like, from day one, here's this guide, it provides lots of support. Is it going to be perfect? No, of course it's not. And you can see this in the draft, like there are inconsistencies within it. There are notes everywhere. There are examples that, work in some contexts and not others. But again, it's a draft.
Right.
And there is functionality, by the way, for anyone listening, to give feedback on this draft. So I would encourage you, considering how important this is to our, what we do for a living, to go and have a review. You have to read the whole thing, but maybe go have a review, get a feel for it, and then take them up on being able to offer feedback. Because if as a community, the L&D space doesn't get involved, then I'm kind of inclined to say we don't get to complain.
That's a good point, yeah.
It's that classic, if you don't vote, shut up. The same is true here. If you've got issues with the current approach to, web content accessibility guidelines, this is your opportunity to get involved and have a say and offer feedback. Take it, because it's not very often, obviously, there is a major version change. So when it does happen, this is your shot to get your idea out there, to get it in front of people who could actually make it a thing. Because there's no other organization really with enough weight behind it to shift the accessibility standards at a global level. This is it. This is what we've got. So yeah, but I thought it was worth looking at anyway. And I guess I've kind of got a question for you, Heidi, maybe something we could discuss, and I would love to hear what everyone else thinks as well in the audience. How do we go about making sure this is not just like 2.2, a great idea in theory, but really nothing more than something you get slapped on the occasional product as a bit of a marketing handle?
That's a good question. I think the ease of use helps a lot, right? I think that the things that you pointed out that make it easier for somebody to just like go, oh, you've got a newbie there, like, I don't know what this is, and they Google it. you know, you Google it now and you're like, I don't want to know what this is, right? And now, like you said, if it's got the flow charts, it's got, but I think that there just needs to be a bigger emphasis. And I think that this creates a good narrative for that emphasis, right, on inclusion, right? Because when people think accessibility, they typically think permanent, usually visual, audio, or mobility disabilities, permanent, right? And like life altering, right? They're not thinking of, you know, somebody, it has moved a lot. They're now on their third fluent language and they're trying to work in the country that they live in. And the language barrier presents issues for them, you know, or the new mom who can't use her keyboard because she has like her baby with her and is trying to work from home with her baby because she's used all her leave. Or, you know, there's so many different situations that come up, and it's like, you know, it's why would you want to alienate, you know, X percent of people when we talk about things like keyboard mobility? I think I read it was something, the number was like much, much higher than you would expect, where it was like at any given time, people who can't use a mouse is like up to 30% of people. I think that sounds kind of high. Maybe I'm wrong there. But it's like, it's much higher than you would think, right? And it's that way for like color blindness, right? It's like 10% of people experience color blindness, right? What percentage of people are neurodivergent that we're addressing with some of these cognitive things, right? So I think it's really important if you're in this field because you're passionate about it, and I think a lot of people are, people don't usually stick around here very long if they're not passionate about it. But if you're passionate about what we do, then I don't understand the people who aren't passionate about including everyone, you know?
Yeah, and I think one of the most like something I'm thinking about a lot is, a while back, learning clusters was kind of presented to our industry as hey, this is a really great way of working it, you know, creating, you know, different modalities of content to cover the same points, allowing people to basically plot their own path towards competence. Sounds great. It kind of never really took off across the industry. I think because of this idea that, oh, we're now creating multiple things that are overlapping, it's wasted energy, blah, 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 blah. However, when we now look at this increased focus on kind of cognition among these guidelines, some of the things that are included in that are readability, plain language, and consistent layout. Okay, we're all on board with that. Reducing extraneous cognitive load. Cool, we should already all be on that. Offering alternative ways to present content, i.e. text, audio, visuals. So like learning clusters then. Providing scaffolding, chunking, and progressive disclosure. It's like, oh, look. I mean, maybe learning designers just infiltrated W3C this time round, but they are basically designing a well-structured piece of educational content. Which does then beg the question that if they're having to write this into the accessibility guidelines, maybe they aren't being delivered as much as they should be. Now, obviously, these aren't aimed specifically at our industry, but I think it is a good reminder that a lot of the stuff that is basic, good practice for designing a kind of training experience increases accessibility in and of itself, but that these kind of nudge us towards, hey, if these are good when you dial them up to 5, what would happen if you dialed them up to 10? And I suspect the answer there is clusters. It's got to be. It also gets us away from these big chunky training interventions. So I think there is a possibility here to utilize the movement of this movement of the standards towards being more cognitively aware to also shift our practice from these big static kind of monolithic interventions to more kind of campaign and cluster based solutions that have previously, I think, been a bit of a hard sell, and we haven't had the "this is why it's important" argument quite strong enough. And maybe this is what helps us do that. I don't know.
Well, I think that, partnering technology with that as well, like, if you need multiple modalities, that's something where if you create something in one modality, Chat GPT or like your AI of choice is decent at helping you get it started in another modality. Like, yeah, it's going to need some tweaking and things like that, but that's an area where you can scale it better, right? Because you don't have to then manually go and create, okay, well, we're going to do a video, but we're also going to do a little, blog that kind of basically says the same thing, just to offer somebody a different way to interact with the information. That's actually a very common marketing thing to do too, is like offer it in multiple methods to people so that they pick the one that interests them most and then they buy your stuff, right? It's almost like buy-in is, being able to access something in the way that you want to, right? But taking that video script and saying, okay, here's the video script. Can you draft a blog article for me? You will probably have minimal editing required because you already gave it such a good source document, because, AI does much better with good source documents. So it's something where the technology is supporting this like multiple modalities as well. I think it's what people want. I think people are used to now getting a choice, right? And they don't want to go back. Like, we get a choice for everything, right? We get a choice of like, I buy unflavored sparkling water and there's 4 different brands at the store that I can choose from, right? Like, we have more choice in front of us than ever before. This is a chance for us to really take advantage of that. Whether we will or not remains to be seen.
Absolutely. And I think that the choice element, I think, is quite interesting, because I think it challenges us to ask, I think, quite a big question of what are we actually trying to achieve? What's actually important? Because I think historically there's been a lot of, it's important that everyone takes this course. It's important that everyone goes through the same experience, because that's how we're going to cover our ass in the event that we go to court.
Yeah.
First of all, no one has ever been able to clearly articulate to me what exactly they're covering their ass for.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. But what if? Some made up hypothetical situation arises where L&D is required to do this. There are times when we are legally mandated to do training.
Sure.
We aren't legally mandated to do a specific type of training. There is no legal mandate saying you must deliver a 45-minute e-learning that bores the pants off every learner and is completely ineffective. No such law exists in any country. No such guideline exists from any sort of industry body. There are laws and there are guidelines saying sufficient training must be provided, or adequate training must be, or people should be sufficiently trained to be competent in their role. The modality, when and how we do it, the content itself, that's our job. But we so often use these clauses as, we couldn't be creative. We couldn't be effective in what we're doing because the law says we have to do a bad job. When it doesn't. It's just a freaking excuse. And I think this might actually get us past that, because this isn't law or legislation, but it is a guideline, and a very well-established guidelines at this point, to say, hey, you need to do this. You need to offer alternatives. You need to give choice. And maybe it will give us enough to kind of break the stranglehold of this. No, we've got to do it this way because, and sort of really start to move forwards with our practice a little bit. And that's as much on us as it is on the businesses in which we work. I would argue it's probably a little more on us. Than on the organizations. Again, I don't know many businesses that are like, no, we want you to create ineffective compliance training or ineffective onboarding training.
Right.
No one says that. That may be the accidental outcome of what they ask you to do, but then kind of our job is to educate and help and support and all that kind of stuff, right?
Well, and I wonder how widespread this will be adopted if it looks anything close to this, because one thing that stood out to me was there are outcomes around avoiding deception. Did you happen to see that one?
Yes.
Where it said no misleading wording. So right now, the definition of that says content does not include double negatives, false statements, or other misleading wording. No artificial pressure. Process completion does not include artificial time limits unless this is essential to the task. How many marketing pages have you visited where it goes, you only have 14.59 left to sign up to lock in your spot for this fantastic marketing, blah, 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 right?
Oh,
It's like that scarcity, right? No hidden pre-selections, no misdirection, no drawing attention away from information that impacts finances, privacy, or safety by visually emphasizing other information. That is massive, right? I mean, I know some ID boot camps that would not be able to say that they're accessible anymore because their websites have all that stuff.
I mean, I guess the interesting thing is here, we almost, there's practical accessibility stuff here about how, people respond to pressure differently and perceive these things differently. But also, this is an ethical point. And I quite like that it's in there. And it's complicated. I get that. And ultimately, any company or organization that, these things are unethical now. So, by the way, if you're doing them, shame on you. But they've always been unethical. But now they're going to be in an accessibility guideline. Is a company that has already made the active decision to act in an unethical way going to care about the new accessibility standards? No, they're not. It's going to make no difference whatsoever to them. But maybe a handful of organizations, and certainly I would hope most L&D people will go, I never thought about that. And we will see no more timed quizzes at the end of compliance training, where I'm sorry, there just doesn't need to be a timer. It's not relevant. It's simply not helpful to anyone to do that. Because nothing you're building in e-learning is so realistic that time is the only thing stopping it being fully immersive.
Right. And if it is, then it's baked into the proper flight simulator. It's not a timer on a dang multiple choice question quiz.
This is it. If I'm clicking the answer of what I think I should be doing and not actually doing it, time is not the immersion breaking factor here. And that's fine. Not everything has to be immersive. It could just be relevant, effective, and and that's fine. That's it. That's all I actually need. I was talking about compliance training. I've been talking about compliance training all freaking week. I did sessions on it yesterday. But I think for me, it's again, for me, compliance training and accessibility so often go hand in hand, because again, it's that topic that impacts everyone. Everyone is going to go through compliance training. So it being as accessible as earthly possible is so important. And that is one of the big hopes I have for this new set of standards is I think the first place we will see it is in compliance training. Because we tend to be very aware of the fact that it's going out to everyone, needs to be accessible. It's often, whether people like to admit it or not, it is the kind of flagship piece of work that most L&D departments do. When people say, so what does L&D do in your business? Everyone's first answer is going to be health and safety, GDPR, data protection, all these other things that are covered by L&D. It's very rarely going to be, that hyper niche leadership development training that like 6 people went on last year, or the one-to-one coaching interventions that have been done with the sales team over the last 6 months. No, it's, remember that data protection training that was god awful? They made us sit through 3 times last year. That's what L&D do. And that's how most people experience us. Now, we need to fix the fact that it's a terrible experience in the first place. But if we can also make it more accessible, then I feel like that overcomes a lot of issues. And so much of this new set of guidelines, to me, just reads as, here's how to make training better. Setting aside accessibility for a minute. Plain language, minimizing extraneous cognitive load, not using any of this time-limited or rushed crap that we see put into things, usually under the guise of gamification or some other nonsense like that. This stuff is, this is just good training design.
Yeah.
And I don't want to minimize the importance of accessibility. It's all about accessibility. But even if we ignore that just for a moment, wouldn't it be great if there was suddenly this set of universally accepted standards, not created by the L&D industry, but imposed upon us? Because I think time has now confirmed we cannot be trusted to set up our own standards of practice. I think that failed. They need to be imposed externally, and maybe this is the first little bit of that happening. Even though they're not specific to training, they are more just about communicating information to other people. But maybe it's step one. I don't, that's kind of what's got me so excited about this, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm giggling at Clea's comment here.
Yeah.
No, of course it's not annoying. Don't be silly. We live for this. Oftentimes people don't watch us.
Now, I've kind of gone off like a bit of a compliance training evangelist this week, just running around the internet going, compliance training! Which I don't think is particularly helpful, but I do like it, I'll be honest. Any questions there? But yeah, thank you for commenting. There's some good stuff there.
Which of the following should you not do? The answer is all of the above. It's fantastic.
Well, quite, yes. So look, we're down to our last few minutes of the show today, which has kind of just been me screaming about accessibility and compliance training, I realise. But I really just wanted to highlight, though, that as I said, I'll pop the link again to the draft in the chats. Please do go and check it out. Please do provide feedback. One thing that's really nice, actually, about these in draft phase and later on is that the editors and people responsible for this work are all listed on there. You'll notice that they all work in other places because they're not employed to do this. Like, this is kind of, W3C is one of those kind of marvels of the world, to my mind, alongside Wikipedia and other such things that kind of just spring up and go, this should not exist in a world that so ruthlessly prioritizes profitability. This should not be able to exist. And yet it does, and is freely available to all of us through the work of very clever, but also very passionate people who don't ever really get any credit. They get shouted at when they get something wrong or when we disagree with them. But I always think that these drafts are an opportunity, one, for us to offer feedback, and two, for a little bit of a, hey, thank you for the work, because we kind of rely on them doing it. And it is a thankless task, let's be honest. So with all that in mind, let's move on. Last few minutes. Heidi, looking ahead to October. It is October.
I know. It's October next week.
Yeah.
Like in a few days. Like middle of next week. I know.
What are you up to in October? What events should we be looking at that you're thinking of going to or that you're excited about?
So I am having the brilliant Will Cronier come into my community, into the all access tier to do an event on AI. And Will, you might know Will from EduFlow. He used to work for them. And then when they were acquired by, I always forget the name because I always want to call it the wrong thing, but it begins with Meta. It's either Verse or something. It's
Metaverse, yeah.
Or, is it Metaverse? Okay, thank you. Or no, I always call it Multiverse. That's what I always mix up. But no, he works for now Metaverse, and he uses AI and builds things using AI, like super techie stuff that I can't even tell you about because it's like too advanced for me. So not just like I generated a quiz. And so I'm really happy because he's going to come into our community and teach our all access members about how to like really use AI in some big nerdy ways. So I'm super excited about that.
Fantastic.
Nerd things. What about you?
Yeah, so it's all go now. So we've got what next week, if you're in the area. I think it's on the 2nd. Yes, 2nd of October is talent gathering in Edinburgh. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing some great sessions. That's one. If you're in the UK and Edinburgh is within a reasonable distance of you, it is a phenomenal, small but really impactful conference. Notably, like there's like the exhibition is like 5 companies last year, I think.
Nice.
So it is really funded by the people who are attending, and yeah, really great speakers. Week afterwards, we've got World of Learning. If you can get to Birmingham, please do come and say hello at World Learning. It'd be lovely to see you. We've also got the Learning Network is running an evening social after day 1. So, you know, drinks and a little bit of food and a chat about what you saw at the event. You'd be more than welcome. Trying to think if there's anything else in October. Yes, October. If you haven't already, I won't be going to this one because I am busy doing other things. But the Learning Leaders Forum is being run by CLO 100. If you read the CPD weekly newsletter, you'll know there's a discount code in there for like £100 off the ticket as well. And it's 2 days aimed specifically at people who are in or approaching kind of senior leadership, CLO, head of L&D, that kind of range. 2 days, no sales pitches, at a hotel with your peers, with incredible speakers, networking. Like absolutely phenomenal event. It's their first year running it. I'm gutted to be missing it. I'm not going to lie. Absolutely gutted. I don't actually know what I'm doing because it's not in my calendar, but I'm assuming it's good because otherwise I wouldn't be missing it. On the 23rd, if you're in London, we've got the Business of Training. This is more for people who train for a living. So this is one I will be going to. It's all about basically, you know, where are we? How effective are we being? What impact are we having for our clients? So fantastic event, well worth going to. Again, central London. So if you are in the area, there are still tickets available. And I think that then is the end of the month. There will be a whole bunch of like webinars and stuff between all of that as well. But those are the big events that are in my calendar. And if you can go to any of them, I think you should because they're all awesome.
Awesome.
And just to clarify, I have nothing to do with any of them. I'm going to some of them.
This is not a
they are just the things in my calendar. Yeah. If you do go to any of them, I'm not getting anything for it. I just think they're cool events and you should go. So with that, we come to the end of our show. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to hear from all of you, though, about what you would like us to cover in future shows. Whether it's the burning question you've got about instructional design or EdTech or something entirely unrelated. Probably won't do that, but we'd be interested to hear nonetheless. Any ideas, we would love to hear from you. But if not, thank you so much for joining us again, and we will see you again next month.